Everybody, welcome to Raise the Vibe. We're in the studio today. Joining me again for our second recording is Jamie Wolf. Super excited to have Jamie back in the studio today for a follow-up on last week's. If you didn't see last week's, go and check it out. It was a great discussion, and we're going deeper this week and into identifying our basic needs and much more. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. Hello, this is Raise the Vibe on Voice of Ashon's 101.9 FM, KVSH. I'm your host, Liz Peterson. Today I have Jamie Wolf back in the studio for part 2 of our chat about healing trauma. If you didn't catch the first show last week, go back and check it out on www.voiceofashon.org/Raise the Vibe or on my YouTube channel at Liz Peterson. Today, Jamie's taking us deeper into the topic, identifying our basic needs. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Liz. I'm really happy to be here today.
So excited to have you back. This is a passion of mine, discussing this topic, and it's all about, in my work, about personal development and healing trauma and childhood wounds. So I'm super excited that you're back in the studio to chat with me again.
Me too.
Sweet. So where are you going to take us today?
Well, I think we should recap a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So we talked about the first week a little bit. I talked about my own personal story, and that in the world of reality, I should really not be sitting here with you in the studio because of the trauma that I experienced. We talked about the ACEs survey, adverse childhood experiences, and I really invite the audience to go back and watch that piece so that they understand the significance of ACEs and how it plays out. But really the bottom line is the higher one's ACEs score, the higher the chance that people will manifest certain things in their health, in their mental health. And so I did manifest some of those things, and I didn't understand what those things were. One of them was I smoked. One of them was I was morbidly obese several times and just could not keep the weight off. And had somebody said, these are 2 symptoms. These are 2 big symptoms that this happened. And that's not to say that anyone who's morbidly obese has experienced trauma. But when we start putting them together with smoking, and I had a little TIA stroke, and then we can start to paint a picture of what's happening with the person. So we talked about ACEs and then resiliency factors. And the reason I am here is because I had very high resiliency factors, which is really people, lovely humans who told me that I had great potential and could be anything I wanted to be, and demonstrated love so that I had hope. And many people don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is kind of the crux. And we talked about my ultimate goal is to end suffering for people. I know that the mental suffering that people who have trauma, undiagnosed or diagnosed, feel, that monkey mind, and PTSD is an anxiety disorder. So really eliminating anxiety is the key. And for people who are wanting to heal their trauma, worked with a woman this morning. I do one-on-one meta coaching, and she has a very high trauma score, and bless her, she is really, really willing to dig in and rework some of those neuroconnectors and get those stories figured out and look at what are the paradigms or the stories that she learned about herself when she was a kid. And then we break those down and unpack them so that she can have a new vision of her life. The biggest thing, though, that we're working on with this particular woman right now is just getting her central nervous system to calm down enough. And I know you work in healing.
Yeah.
This brain inflammation of the body, physical pain, all manifestations of trauma. In her case, and just getting things to settle down enough so then we can go in and she'll have the resiliency, the ability to do the deep dive. And we're going to unpack some hard stuff. And what I know the beauty of this is, at the end of the day, it will at some point become a story that she tells. It won't be her identity anymore.
It won't be her narrative anymore.
Yeah, it just won't.
That's
right,
great.
Right.
So how do you help people unpack their emotional trauma? No, I want to actually ask a different question. So working with the central nervous system, what tools do you have to help people sort of calm and relax the central nervous system? Because that's really important, especially in a time of crisis. You know, I go to tapping or other things also, you know, for myself or for my clients. So what are some of the things you bring in to just like calm that central nervous system down?
Well, I love tapping, and so I have a list of 20 tools. I do an 8-hour seminar about just this piece. What are the things
Awesome.
that we can use? So tapping is one that worked really well for me, and I still use it. I do what I call undercover tapping. So if I'm in front of a big audience and I feel myself get a little bit triggered, I just do this. It's just really my little single third eye, and I'll just turn around and look at the board.
Nice. Jamie has her hand right above her eyebrow, just pressing gently. That's one of the points.
The little third eye one works for me. I know people who love EMDR. They've had great success with that. I didn't, and so I think it's important for people that are really wanting to heal their lives. And it's not just about healing; it's about really wanting to live their best version of their life. We get one shot at this. It's about what tools work for them. So when I'm working with people, I have them try various things, and we start out slowly. We talk about what resonates with them and what might not resonate with them. And so sometimes some things work and sometimes some things don't. But it's the most basic things. If you're listening today and you want to get started, really simple. What are you eating? Are you eating a bunch of processed food because that causes inflammation? Are you drinking enough water because you can't process inflammation if you're not drinking enough water? Are you consuming alcohol because it'll wake you up? And sleep is really critically important. All these things everyone in the world knows. If you watch TV or are basically awake human, you know what you need to do.
Yeah.
Get that central nervous system to calm down. And PTSD is an anxiety disorder. And so when people think about an anxiety disorder, it doesn't matter if you're diagnosed or not, but it's just the constant churning of what could possibly go wrong. And people think about that and they think, I hate that my brain does this. And you know what, Liz? I love that my brain did that because it kept me alive. That is some rock star adjustment to the reality stuff. And now I don't need that anymore. So how do we tune that down?
Gosh, that's wonderful that you saw that as, you know, something that was positive to your life and that could take you a little bit deeper, because most of us were like, okay, I'm on the hamster wheel again. How do I get off? How do I flip the switch and get my, you know, mind shifting? So how did you use that to your benefit?
Well, and I want to give proper credit. So my girlfriend has actually said this to me recently. And so I'm sure that Liz will be listening to this, also Liz, a different Liz, that she when she said this, it just really resonated with me. And she said, think about how amazing our minds are, that we can adapt in the moment to being human beings that can show up with what tools we need. And our work now is that's just not working for me anymore to be hyper vigilant. I don't need to worry about every little thing that's going on in my environment anymore, especially not where we live, for goodness sakes. So it's really about retraining our brain. We talked a little bit about JoeDispenza, and I have kind of a cool example.
Yeah, let's go there.
JoeDispenza, kindergartner style. If you know who Joe is, you know he's a doctor. But I have a graph up here, a poster up here, and it really explains how transformation of the mind works. So I have a little dog, and his name is Hector, and he is muy suave, very nice, really, really cool little dog. And Hector is a creature of habit. I have lots of dogs, but him in particular, he really loves his habituated behaviors. He likes things exactly the same every day. So in the morning when I let Hector out of the little dog door, Hector runs to this tree over there, and you might not be able to see, but I have a little squirrel drawn in the tree, and he barks at the squirrel every day, and the squirrel hops away. It's like clockwork. It's going to happen every single moment, every day. And then he goes over to the plum tree, where he does his first order of business, and then he runs over to a different part of the yard where he does the second order of the business, and then he comes straight back in. It's literally like a baseball diamond every day. And because he's done this, guess what's in my backyard?
What is that?
Little grooves,
Oh,
right?
he's worn a path. That's amazing.
Worn a little path.
He's
where
so
he
habitual.
runs.
There's a path.
And this is
And
what
how many of us have worn that path?
Exactly.
We're doing the same thing every day.
Right. And this is what really the crux is. So the great teachers knew that when we are doing the same behaviors all the time, that it really lulls the brain to sleep. So what I know is really important for us to do is to mix things up and figure out what are the habituated things we're doing and mix them up, because then we're building new neuroconnectors. So Hector has these very powerful neuroconnectors, and I just think of them as kind of a straight line. And when we have a thought, or an emotion, it will find the neuroconnector that is the largest. So it literally in our brain, if I have a thought or a feeling, oh, I feel sad, my brain will think, why do you feel sad? Do you feel sad because it's cold today? Or do you feel sad because your girlfriend said this? Or do you feel sad because of that? And whatever the strongest band is, it's amazing. It will connect to that. And then it will tell me, that's why you're sad today. Well, it may or may not be true. It may or may not have anything to do with what's actually happening in my environment. And this is so key for people to get.
So we're living off our past patterns.
Exactly. And all my past beliefs and my paradigms. So things like, your parents said money doesn't grow on trees. And so you think, oh, I have to work hard my whole life and strive and kill myself. Work, 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 work. Well, that's a paradigm. Actually, it's not true. There's lots of ways to anyway, if I wanted to mix it up for my boy Hecky and really change it up, and I actually did this one day, I put a blockade in his little path where he runs, and I left it there for quite a while. So Hector ran out. I got my coffee ready this particular morning, and I was all ready to observe what he was going to do. And he ran out, and there was a blockade right here, and he had to go around it to then go to the tree to bark. He still wanted to get from point A to point B, but I changed his path. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? What happens when I remove the path, the block?
He still went around. As if it was still there, would be my guess.
It would be a good guess if I did it long enough and we built a stronger pathway.
Right.
He would do that, but I didn't leave it long enough.
Okay.
And so this is why people will say, I don't want to change. It's just too much work. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's unpacking things and looking at them and being willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of growth. And we call this being in the gap. And so what most people want, we'll switch over here to this poster now, is that they want to take whatever the STH stands for, short-term high. They want that moment of ease. They don't want to have to really work. I was at the swimming pool yesterday my friend invited me to go to it's like a senior aerobics in the water class. It was great. I was actually sore today. I was ready. But I noticed that there were a lot of people in the pool that were choosing to take the short-term high. And then I would hear their conversations around, wow, I'm working so hard, but I'm not really getting anywhere. Well, they're not really working hard. I watched other people in the pool who were really like under the water, moving the things around and struggling, doing the thing.
Right.
And it really comes down to, Liz, healing. Am I willing to be uncomfortable? And if I want to stay in my comfort zone, your life is going to look exactly the same. And people say, well, I have what I need. Well, your life reflects exactly what you're doing. That's how that works.
So true. So
when we take the short-term high, it always turns into the long-term low. That's it. We stay, I can eat that bag of potato chips, short-term high, and it's going to turn into a long-term low for me because I'm still going to have that belly. Or I can make a different decision and choose the short-term low, which is I'm going to work a little harder in the pool. I'm not going to have those chips. I'm going to limit my intake of, my whole thing right now is one processed thing per day that I get to have. That's it, one serving. And that is taking the dip. And it's called the dip of discomfort for a reason. In business, they know that people who are successful in business regularly take the dip of discomfort. And you were actually describing it to me earlier, although you didn't know it. when you were talking about how you were learning and having the hard time of learning. Your willingness to come in here and be vulnerable and learn something is taking a dip.
Right.
And then what's the payoff? The long-term high, because you're getting what you want. You're getting your needs met. For contribution, what are your needs around being on the radio?
Put in the hot seat.
I know. Well, would it be contribution to your community?
Definitely. Yeah. I want the community to know who is out there on Vashon that can help us in our time of need.
Right.
You know, going through kind of a dark night of the soul a couple years ago and a huge, you know, transformation, you know, in my life. I was looking out into my community, who's out there to be able to help me, you know, during this time. So I want to bring all of those people to Vashon. Yeah.
So that people know where they can go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's so great.
Who's out there for me, you know, when I need them, and what can they provide for me?
So another need that you're meeting is really for help and support for other people. And also you're providing kindness and love, the L word, right?
Thank you.
We can reduce suffering if we know what our resources are.
Yeah.
So this piece here, the dip of discomfort, most people, there's a little drawing, kind of hard to describe it as person A and then that person later in a straight line. And what people think is that personal change, personal growth, really happens in a straight line, and it's not true. And this truth blew my mind when I learned this, that personal growth actually happens. I learn an idea. I'm super clumsy at it. I have to take risks and be vulnerable, and I struggle, and then I mess it up. I'm gonna mess it up. I'm gonna say some things or do, especially learning boundaries. I was so clumsy, Liz.
Yeah.
I like way too harsh and then not enough, and trying to figure that out.
Those boundaries are so difficult.
Oh, Lord. So really it's, we go up, we learn a little bit, and then we'll go back down a little bit, and then we'll go up. The point is that I always want my lowest new point to be higher than my highest first point.
Right.
And as long as that's happening, I'm on the road to recovery and to living a thriving life. So this diagram comes from, I saw it first on Oprah Winfrey's show, and she was talking about her weight and her addiction to food. And she was on there with, oh goodness, his name's going to the Indian guru guy, medicine doctor. He's a physician. It'll come to me.
Yep. I do their 21-day meditation. Why can't I think of him right now? I've even seen him. Deepak Chopra. Yep.
And she said, you know, what is my problem? Why can't I transform my body? I have done it, but why won't it say? And he said, oh, Oprah, it is all about the short-term high and the long-term low. You consistently choose the macaroni and cheese, which is the short-term high, instead of the short-term low. Now, how does this translate to behavior and PTSD? If I consistently choose the same people and the same patterns and the same path that Hector takes every day, I just keep making that groove thicker and deeper. I have to be willing to try something new, and it's a fight because our brain is constantly telling us, go back to the old, go back to the old. And it's really staying the course. And that is what courage is. I love Dr. Brene Brown say, there's no such thing as courage absent when you're petrified to do something new. It's a requirement of courage to be scared. And most people, according to Carol Dweck, about 60% of the population aren't willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
so they'd rather stay stuck
out of our comfort zone. Yeah. And it's choices.
Yeah. It's choices.
It's a moment to moment choices. You know, are you going to choose this or are you going to choose that again?
Right.
Yeah.
So I say I'm a conscious chooser in my life.
Nice.
I choose, and I'm fully responsible for the outcomes of my choices. I own them, and that is definitely where I want to go. So
how about life by design? Because that is all about conscious choice, and you talk about that, you know, life by design and not default.
And so most people live a life by default, and it's just, I get up, I go to work, this is what I have to do. And they just don't have the awareness to know, or no one told them. I didn't even realize this until literally, it's probably 6 years ago. Oh my goodness. And I had a teacher named Christine King. She was my first coach. That's why I became a coach, because of Christine King. And she said, do you not get that you're in charge? And it was so interesting. We started down this road of my goodness, I am in charge. And how do I become a conscious chooser? And so let's back up a little bit, Liz. Why would somebody not become a conscious chooser in their life? Because it requires taking full ownership and walking away from victimhood.
Yeah.
I was a victim when I was a child. I am not a victim today. I am choosing, if I continue to choose to be in unhealthy relationships or hang out with people that just aren't good for me, or do things that aren't good for my body, I am choosing that. No one's forcing the potato chips in my mouth. No one's forcing the thoughts in my head. I can actually take ownership of all of that. And the other piece of that is sweet, where I have a ton of compassion for people, including myself, is once I take ownership and I learn to ask for what I need and what I want, I might get a no.
Yeah.
And that can be really painful. So part of being an adult, a thriving adult, is learning how to hear no.
Yeah, rejection.
Yeah. So this is my need.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not even be rejection. It might just be, this is my need. And the person says, I'm not willing to meet that need. Oh,
Right.
boy. Well, now I have a choice to make. What am I going to do with this? So I brought you a present today. It's pretty,
great.
It's pretty cool. I use this in my seminars, and basically it's a little deck of cards, folks, that are on radio. It's about a half-size deck, and on one side it has a list, and not a comprehensive list, of Maslowian needs. And Abraham Maslow was a psychologist that lived in the early 1900s, and he this is my own personal deck that I travel with, and it's available on my website. But what he figured out is that people who are what he calls self-actualized, and I say living the best version of themselves, had a lot of needs that were met. And people who were suffering had tons of unmet needs. And when we can identify what our needs are in a situation, then we can actually ask to get our needs met. And so when people first come to, I call it recovery, trauma recovery, I ask them, what do you think your biggest needs are? And they have this deck. And so they'll look through and they look at these words, and you can see there's a complete disconnect.
Yeah, I could see getting this deck a few years ago. And when somebody asked me, what are your needs? And guys, I didn't know, because I had been caretaking for others for so long and putting myself on the back burner that I had no idea what my actual needs were. So to sit down with this and to actually go, whoa, maybe this would be a great tool.
It's a fantastic tool. I use it every morning. So the keys are that every one of us have all of these needs every day. We all have them. So when people say to me that person is needy now, I actually stop them. Because we're all composed of a bunch of needs, and to say you shouldn't have certain needs met or you have too many needs, no, I have too many needs every morning. Everyone does. You're just in denial of your needs if you're criticizing someone for wanting to meet their need, whatever it is. So I pulled out some of the cards here that when I first started my recovery work were really the big players for me. And some of these I'm still working on. So as a child, I did not have safety or security. In any moment, there would be violence in our house, and I might not know when that's going to happen. And it just would come in a second.
Right.
I got very good at being very funny. And then this is what we call codependence. What I like to call is was an adjustment that kept me alive. I learned how to be funny and use humor to distract my dad and keep him from going crazy. And I was able to use that a lot, which is so interesting. Great quality until my first marriage, Liz. And when things got too serious between me and my wife, I would make a joke. And
to distract and deflect.
And it didn't work. It actually had a terrible effect. So these pieces for us where I want to be conscious of, yes, that's an old behavior. Yes, that worked for me historically. And is it really working for me now? Is it serving me now? And
that's a great question.
Which brings in emotional intelligence. So the first component of emotional intelligence is self-awareness.
Yeah.
And part of self-awareness is knowing what the effect on the other person is of my actions. So it's not enough that my intention is that I want to do this. Self-awareness says, what is the impact? And in nonviolent communication, we talk about impact and intention, and they can really be two different things. Somebody means to be funny, but it really isn't in the moment. So another big need I had as a kid growing up was predictability. And so I just didn't know when things were going to go sideways. And one of my biggest, another big need was peace. And this is how real this is to somebody. You know, I don't know about you and tattoos, but I actually got a tattoo of peace on my arm. That's how important it is to me. Is the number one thing that I seek in my life is peace and ease and beauty.
That's up in my top 5 as well.
Yeah, it's a great one.
It is.
And then I went into the work of law enforcement. And what is that about? Predictability, safety, security. And we're called peacemakers, right? Or keepers of the peace. Yep. So lots of those things here. Some of the things I want to point to, and when I say that I'm thriving, yes, I'm thriving. And personal growth work, now you know, Liz, it just doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. It's an ongoing, lifelong process.
Which is another reason why people decide they don't want to do that. And it's unfortunate because they'll never get to experience the beauty of becoming fully Joe Campbell style who they are, right? It really is the greatest piece of
don't give up on yourself, everybody.
That's right. So one that I struggle with still today is fun and play. There was not fun and play in my family. It was serious, and I'm good at being serious and learning, and I'm really good at talking about serious things. And so part of my journaling right now is I have to make sure that I do something fun and have fun and play around that. So we also develop growing up what's called a gold-plated need. And this is a lot of these needs we can live without. Like when I'm traveling, I don't have love or intimacy or friendship. I'm teaching and then I go to my hotel room. So there's a lot of stuff I don't have. Community. I teach in very, my seminars are a lot in very ugly areas. So there's not beauty and aesthetics. There are times when I fly back and kiss the ground with ash on me. So I'm so blessed to live here.
So blessed.
But there's one thing that I can't live without, and we call this our gold-plated need, is for me, and everyone has a different one, is dignity. So no matter where I go, I need that to be happening. And this is
why to us.
Well, dignity is an important one because, so I grew up in a family that was 8 generations from Mobile, Alabama, in the deep South. And so the things I saw happen to African Americans and them having to constantly swallow their dignity and not have no access to that. And the hierarchical systems there, never mind the sexist, men and women.
Yeah.
The way that I felt it was that, and I talked a little bit about this, I knew there was something different about me as a little kid, even though I dressed like a girl and acted like a girl and did all, looked girly. My transformation to really have my outside match my insides has just recently happened in the last couple of years. And I feel so much dignity walking around like this, like, yes, this is how I look. And I feel like me with it, this appearance. So dignity was important to me on those levels. And so here's why it's important to know our needs and to know the big ones. Because that's a beautiful one, right? Dignity and offering people dignity. But guess what is the most dangerous thing that can happen to me? To be in a situation where dignity is not offered, there's a high likelihood that I might lose my marbles.
Really?
So,
why is that?
It's because it's so important to me. So when people lose it, a lot of times, and I'm watching them lose it, I'm not judging them at all. I'm thinking, what are you trying to protect? What need is unmet here for you? What's happening?
Okay, so not getting or having dignity in a situation is your trigger, your strongest trigger.
Exactly.
So that would trigger an emotional response. And then so you get to view, okay, when somebody's having an emotional response, what is it that's unhealed within them?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or not even unhealed, but wow, this is whatever's happening here is really important to them. And a lot of it for many people, especially in law enforcement, I can explain, and that's not what this radio show is about, but the reason that African Americans and a lot of the things that we're seeing are being murdered on the street and there's just no other way to say it, by peace officers. a lot of it has to do with such a profound need for respect that I interpret any action that you're making as disrespect, and therefore I need to defend that need because it's not met. So how do we heal this? I meet my need for dignity. I hang out with people who love me just the way I am. I make sure that I am hooked up with that 24/7. So when I go to a different place and I'm working, a lot of times, people will look at me because I look different than the average cat. And so if my need is met, then I can look at them and say, I know, look, and kind of make a joke and have it be funny. If my need is unmet, I might act out sideways and say or do something that would not serve me or the other person.
Right.
So if my need's met, I can have compassion for them, for myself a little bit. I go to some places where I definitely don't fit in.
Right. Okay. So when this need is not being met and you feel yourself, getting emotional or, being triggered. So what are your tools? Because I think these are important too, to not react, but instead respond.
Yeah, I love it. Reaction and the difference between reaction and response, right?
Yeah.
So I think my biggest tool is making sure that my needs are consistently met and being aware of them. So I take my needs inventory every day. And today I noticed that when I woke up, I was a little bit tired. And I also noticed that I had a little bit of a need for support around some projects that I was doing.
Right.
So I went immediately and took care of those things.
Awesome.
I also had a need for joy and laughter. And so I called my friend Anita, who hooks me up. She is so funny. And I can just tell her, like, let's talk about fun stuff. And she will do that. So I have different
great support team.
And I have that I've developed consciously, right? All of this is about consciously choosing. If I had the old people in my life, these new people wouldn't be in my life. Right. So this idea of editing is really critical.
It's huge.
So I do something about that. Last week we talked about the airplane. Now there's 4 kinds of people. There's our lift people who lift us up. That's my Anita, and our thrust people. And Anita thrust, she's all about that too. They challenge us to be better than we are. And I'll say something and she'll say, oh, stop that. Oh, my goodness, did you just hear yourself? And so she's continually helping me edit my own language. She can hear my paradigms.
Wow,
such a gift. And then we got our drag people, and they're the people that want to talk about CNN and their aches and pains and what's happening there. And then our weight people, who we all know these people, you walk away from them and you just feel like you need to take a nap. So they're nursing and rehearsing their wounds and talking about them. We can
pulling your energy down to their level. Yeah.
Right. So when I learned this from Rich Boggs, he said, you want to get rid of the weight. You want to lift yourself up. Get rid of the weight. And this is the thing we were talking a little bit about, man.
Yeah.
Cutting people and ideas and behaviors loose is hard work.
It is.
So this idea that I'm going to introduce for those of you on radio, you can't see, but if you visualize an auditorium, and I drew it kind of like our Vashon Island, our art center.
Nice.
There, a little bit. So each one of us have this auditorium. And so you're on the stage. And so some people immediately say to me when I'm doing this work with individuals, well, I want my family on the stage with me. No, there's one person on your stage of your life, and that's you. You got other people on your stage. We call that codependency. I recommend the work of Melanie Beattie. There's lots of 12-step groups you can go to, but you're the only one on your stage.
Yeah, learn to stand on your own 2 feet. That's a journey as well.
No kidding, right? Right. And in order to be up here, I need to be relatively healthy. I need to be in touch with my needs and my feelings, because my job as a human is to then control my amphitheater and who is in my amphitheater. So radio folks, what you're not seeing is there's some X's around we've got the front row seats, and then the different aisles that go back, and then there's some side aisles. So I've got lots of X's on my side aisles. These are kind of people that I see around town. I like them. They're not people I would call in an emergency. I don't know them that way, but I have some kind of an affinity for them. If something happened, I'd show up if they called me. We're not in our day-to-day life with each other. And then I have a few people here who are up close. And of course, so right up close here, right up next to the stage is my girlfriend Liz, right? So we talk all the time, and she knows me very well, and we share a lot of emotional intimacy and have a really beautiful bond. And I just named one other person, Terry, who's my 20-year friend. We actually live on the same property and know each other very well. I know I can call her and depend on her no matter what.
Nice.
And then there's various other people I won't name that are around, and they're in different places. And then I have this person here. This is my buddy Teresa, who she lives in another state.
Uh-huh.
And when I see her, she's right up front. You know, that kind of friend. And so it's like, oh my God,
Right.
we just wherever we left off. But we may not talk for 2 weeks, and that's okay. I know she loves me. I know I love her. I can count on her. And in an emergency, boom, she'd be there.
Nice.
I have my brother outside of my auditorium. He's actually outside of the doors. And this is a different one. So this is, when we talk about emotional intelligence and self-awareness, this is part of self-awareness. Who are my friends? What do they bring? Where are they? Who do I have really up close to me? Are they someone that's a lifter and a thruster? Or am I surrounded by drag people? So audience, YouTube, I invite you to just get out a piece of paper and draw your little auditorium and look at who is up close to me.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, I would love to be up close to me, but he's not. And for various reasons, it just doesn't happen. So he comes in occasionally and checks in, and then he goes back outside, and that's his choice. Now, my auditorium doors are open to him all the time. I would love for him to be in there and his children. And it just, in present time, is not what's the truth. The other important piece to know about this is, so my auditorium is my safe space. Who gets to come in and have access to me? And I'm not talking about when I'm out in the world doing a seminar or leading something big. Those people get me, but with a certain amount of boundaries. The closer up people get, I shouldn't have to have up big walls and boundaries with these people and be thinking about what are they saying or doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people, and this is where people get stuck in trauma recovery. They want to let everybody in their auditorium.
Yeah.
And they say things like, well, they're my family member, or that's my mother or my father. And I want you to notice where my mom and dad are.
Mm-hmm.
They're not only out here, but there's a brick wall. They don't get to get anywhere near my auditorium. My father recently passed away. And we had not talked for over 30 years. And
I'm sorry.
it is what it is. So there's other people out here too. I love Marianne Williamson says, God bless you and give me back my key. You know, so those are those people. God bless all of you, but you do not get access to my auditorium. So people who get stuck in the patterns of re-traumatizing themselves keep going back to the same places with the same people and expecting different results.
Yeah.
And we know what Einstein said about that, right?
Yeah.
That's insanity. So what do we need to do? We need to constantly analyze who it is that's up close and where do we want them presently? And then having my own boundaries around my time. Who am I spending time with? What am I doing? And really being mindful about that. So one of the ways I do that is by using these cards. So I have another friend, Susan. Susan is also, she is silly. And growing up as a kid, I didn't learn a lot about being silly. It wasn't something that we did in our family.
Right.
Susan's a dance in our living room, silly, just funny person. And so when I call her, if I'm looking through my cards and I'm like, wow, man, I am not hooking up fun and play or silliness. That's not happening. And I actually really need that. I can call her because I'm aware of my needs. I don't call Terry for that. Terry's not the silliest person in the world. She can be. But if I really want an instant hit, I know where to go. And I'll say, what are you doing? And invariably, she is doing something totally goofy. And in fact, on my next trip, I'm going to spend the weekend with her. She lives in Pacific Grove, California, and we're going to do some hiking. And it will involve dancing in the living room. And here's the thing about Susan. When she's dancing, she's just flowing and having a great time in the living room. I'm a little uncomfortable. But what do people do? We get uncomfortable in the interest of growth. And if I play with her enough and dance with her in the living room enough, then at some point I'll wake up one morning and that neural connector will be big enough for me now where I'm like, oh my goodness, I just want to dance in my living room. What's going on? That's so interesting.
Right.
So we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So
Interesting.
folks listening, be mindful. Who is up close and personal to you? Who are you learning from? And our mind is just constantly picking up their messages of what that, who they are. I met the nicest man in the hot tub this morning at the pool after I swam.
That's great.
A really, really great guy. And I noticed that his entire conversation with me, he was talking about ideas and principles and concepts about how to help people and build community. What a beautiful man. And then somebody else walked over and sat down and tried to change the conversation. And I watched him. He got up and got out. He's a man who knows the secret, which is I will become what I surround myself with.
Yeah.
So that really getting our central nervous system calm by taking care of our dietary needs, getting exercise, all that stuff we know how to do, critical. Getting rid of inflammation, big. And lots of physical pain that happens with trauma. People walk around with lots of physical pain in their fascia, and I think you know a lot about that.
Yeah.
And then editing our lives. Is this a person I want to keep in my life? And when I'm 90, do I want that person standing at the foot of my bed? Like, is that really who I want there? And so people who do well are, most people settle and cope. But to stick with something that's not working and not meeting your needs is actually, in my opinion, wasting your life.
Yeah.
It's a waste, and it's a bad decision all the way around for you. And so the biggest message for me was learning that I matter. I can actually ask for what I want, and I can have a realistic expectation what I need, and I can have a realistic expectation that it will be met by my friends. And when I have a need and it's unmet, chronically unmet, period, and then one of my friends is actually doing that thing, we have really dip moment conversations where I choose the short-term low. We're going to have a sweaty conversation about this thing because it is not working for me at all. So I have those regularly, and they never stop being sweaty and yucky. But what happens to the friendship? Most of the time people will say, oh my goodness, I had no idea I was saying that thing. Let me fix that.
Right.
I'll switch that up for you. And those are the kind of people I want in my life.
Nice.
So yeah.
Wonderful. So you mentioned, so I'm going to come back around to emotional intelligence because you gave us number 1, self-awareness earlier, and there are 5. Could you go through those 5 components with us?
I'm happy to. So the first component is self-awareness. So it's me, and you can just Google emotional intelligence. It's everywhere out there right now. Yep. And for folks who aren't aware of this, businesses are, it is a buzzword, and people will throw it out there and I say, really, what does that mean to you? They have no clue. So emotional intelligence is hard work. It is the willingness to take the dip all the time, that discomfort. So self-awareness. Oh, I noticed when I was in the restaurant and that waiter said X and Y to me, and I said something back that what I was meaning to say wasn't conveyed in that moment. Or I noticed whatever, I noticed my reaction. So, but it's not just noticing me. So I say, notice what you're noticing. Let's pay attention to our noticer. It's not just me, it's also what effect is my behavior having on people? Now, I'm not talking about the one-off person who says you're a jerk. When 3 people say you're a jerk, maybe it's time to check that thing out and see, is that true? So that's self-awareness. The second component is my ability to regulate myself. So self-regulation. So it's not enough to say, I know who I am. This is what I do. It's how I've always been. Okay. You have self-awareness. Are you willing to regulate that behavior depending on where you are now? And are you sophisticated enough emotionally? And this is where the needs cards, I love them so much. Can I recognize the needs of others in a situation and adjust myself so that I can meet everybody's needs? So my belief isn't in a codependent way, your needs matter more than mine. My belief is all of our needs matter equally. So my goal is, how can we let that happen in a world where we're actually looking for the win-win?
Mm-hmm.
So the third piece there is, and it depends on who you read, but motivation is the way that I teach it. And motivation meaning, let's get really clear about what it is that I want in this, and in this discussion or whatever I'm trying to do. So we all have overriding, it's kind of our, and everyone around you knows this, everyone around me knows mine. It's not necessarily what I say. So we know people who their motivation is to get one over. We know people who their motivation is to win and be right.
Mm-hmm.
We know people who their motivation is to share. We know people whose motivation is, oh my goodness, my one friend, Annie, her biggest motivation is to be helpful.
No.
She just loves to be helpful. And she knows a lot of stuff. She's a really helpful person. So people see your motivations and they know what they are. And so I want to choose conscious motivation. So I practice in the airport kindness. It's I want one of my motivations to be kindness. So
Nice.
while I'm in the airport, I go out of my way to thank you so much. Oh my goodness, that was so kind. Oh, and they'll tell me, I'm sorry we held you up. Oh, nothing's a problem in my world. Thank you for keeping us safe. You know, that kind of thing. Really practicing that and taking that dip. So the key about the first three, Liz, is that this is the work we do inside. Nobody can do it for us.
Nice.
Now the other two is what people see. So if I've done my work, then people will see these other two pieces as a manifestation. And the first one is empathy. So there's lots of definitions of empathy. My favorite is, of course, Dr. Brene Brown, rock star of the world, who studied empathy and compassion, vulnerability. And Brene Brown says it's the ability to feel with someone. So can we play a little game?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Liz, for the radio viewers, Liz and I look super different. That's all I need to say. I think a lot of things about our lives are pretty different, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And how we walk in the world.
Sure.
Yeah. So when people say to me, empathy is the ability to walk in someone's shoes, I say that's nonsense. I cannot walk in the shoes of an African-American male or a heterosexual white woman or a cisgendered white male. I cannot walk in there. I can't do it. I can imagine it. I don't know. That is just not my reality in terms of having lived that way. And conversely, you don't have the experiences that I have.
Right.
So this whole idea that we can walk in somebody's shoes and that sympathy is nonsense. Here is the gift. And again, so if you flip the cards over and the sides have nothing to do with each other, there's a blue side and it's feelings.
Nice.
So I work with a lot of law enforcement and they're like, feelings, what's a feeling? And, they can't even come up with one thing. So we spend a lot of time on feelings. So I'll just ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Is your family 8 generations from the Deep South?
No.
And do you consider yourself a lesbian?
No.
And what else can I ask you? Have you lived in 23 places in your life?
No.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I can ask you, but do you have kids?
I have kids.
Yeah, and I don't, right? So it's just another example of it.
Sure.
So if I try to relate to you on all those things, I'm going to fall short because I can't. I haven't had a baby. I haven't raised children. I just haven't done it. But here's where we can connect. This is so beautiful. Check it out. Okay. So here's the feeling cards. And the first one I pulled up was tender. Liz, have you ever felt tender?
Yes.
How about afraid?
Yes.
Resentful?
Yep.
Relieved?
Yes.
Have you ever been unhappy?
Yes.
And how about optimistic?
Yes.
The beautiful thing about human beings is every single one of us have felt every one of these emotions. And as long as I can identify your feelings and identify my feelings, then I can speak to you in a compassionate, empathetic way. It doesn't matter what the situation is.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So
I love that.
Your present is the little cards.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So then, so empathy, the ability to feel with another. And then the last thing are social skills. So I can have all of these components. I can really know myself. I can regulate my behavior. And then I can walk into a room and everyone runs scattering. We all know these people because my social skills are so lacking. And social skills, you know, people think a lot about them as just luck. And I don't believe in luck. I believe in training. So my social skills were honed as a waitress, working in a restaurant.
I can relate.
Yes, yes. And it requires a lot to do that. In fact, Buzz, who's that? Buzz Aldrin. Is he the dude that went to the moon? Buzz, anyway.
Aldridge?
Yes, that guy, Buzz Aldridge. He said we don't believe in luck. We believe in training. And so, what is recovery from trauma? It's training.
Retraining the mind.
It's retraining my mind. What do I choose to think in this moment? And how am I going to react in this moment? In the pool yesterday, so I'm always looking at these pieces. There was a woman in the pool, and she works at the senior center downtown. And so sweet. I said, well, when people get older, I think they stop thinking that they can change their lives so much. And she said, oh, honey, there could be nothing further from the truth. And I said, tell me more, which is one of my favorite things. So what did I do? I expressed one of my paradigms or a belief.
Yeah.
She corrected me. Now, in that moment, I have a choice. I can argue with her, or I can think, well, my goodness, she looks quite a bit older than me. I think she might know what she's talking about. And she works at the senior center. So I'm going to be receptive to what she has to say.
Awesome.
This is social skills. And she explained to me that she never felt freer. She turned 60 and she felt so free and to make big changes. And that lots of people, when they get up in their more elderly years, decide to make dramatic and drastic changes in their lives.
Awesome.
So I love that. Yeah. That's really what it's about. Am I willing to take the dip of discomfort? Am I willing to stay in my discomfort? A Buddhist idea, if you know, we all know this. And my goodness, am I willing to just stay here until it resolves and until I learn what I have to learn? Another teacher of mine calls that the gap. And so it's the area between, I identify what my areas of discontent are. So I don't have enough joy in my life is one of my current areas of discontent.
Okay.
So I'm actually actively seeking, friendships that are, where people know how to do joy better than me, so I can learn what that's about. So we have our area of discontent, and then we create a vision for what I want. And so I envision, people coming into my life that are joyful and happy, and that they really know how to play and do those things that I struggle with sometimes. I'll just work. I love my work. It's beautiful work.
It's great work. Thank you so much.
Right. And then in between is what we call the gap. And being in the gap is freaking uncomfortable, right? It's, I think I saw you at one of the downtown dances, and you were dancing right in front of the restaurant. Do you remember?
Oh, that was Strawberry Festival during
the
partner dancing thing, right? I love that.
That was super fun. And so you were there, and I was noticing that so many people were so comfortable dancing, and I was with a friend. We're both leads, and so we were not doing very well. We were, kind of struggling, arguing with each other about who was going to be lead. But finally, we got our groove, we got it together, and we really were able to have a good time. What most people do is they get on the dance floor of their life, Liz, and they get uncomfortable, and you know what they do? They go sit down on the sidelines. Yeah. And they stay the same. And that willingness to, it may look silly, and it's uncomfortable right now, but I'm willing to do it. And the other thing that people, that really one of the most important keys is that knowledge does not equal understanding. This is really a deep and resonant truth. People think they can go read Brene Brown's books about vulnerability and authenticity, and they can read all day long. But knowledge here is not what's called understanding. Knowledge does not equal understanding, and there's only one way I can get understanding.
Yeah, explain that some more.
I gotta practice. And practicing means I'm gonna fall off the bike. and I'm gonna need to pick myself back up, and I might be bruised and banged, but I'm going to do it again and do it again and ask for forgiveness. And so I say a lot. One of my tools I love is a do-over. Do you know about do-overs?
A little bit.
Yeah. So if I make a mistake with you, in the moment, if I say, Liz, that was not my best, that I said that complete, would you mind if I had a do-over? Most people will say,
I love that.
Yes, have a do-over.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So I do a lot of do-overs, and my friends know that I do not do perfection, and I do not want them to be. I'm in a no perfection zone, please. Please
Awesome.
come with your whole imperfect self so that I can be my whole imperfect self. Own your stuff. We'll say we're sorry, and we'll work through it, and we'll have those sweaty and uncomfortable conversations until we figure it out.
That's great.
Yeah. So knowledge does not equal understanding. So for those of you who think you can just go watch an online seminar, you got to get out from behind your computer and go interact with people. That's where the last piece of social skills comes in. And the only way I develop social skills is by practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have about 4 more minutes left. Where would you like to go? Is there something, want to dive deeper into that a little bit, or go into a little bit of problem solving around that, possibly?
I think, did we talk about inescapability?
Just touch on it just a bit. Why don't you do?
So yeah, so there's different when we talk about trauma, there's under the big header of trauma, there's a couple of different traumas that are really interesting to me. They're both my big hits, and different people have different kinds of trauma that happen to them. We generally think of mental, emotional, sexual, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's the big header.
Yeah.
But for me, what's interesting more than that story matters. But what's behind that are the paradigms and the lessons that I learned as a child that are no longer serving me. So one of mine that ties into this really well is called inescapability. And it is the idea that I can't get away and I have to stay. So it's kind of an interesting piece of, as a child, I was a victim and I had to stay there. And as an adult, I have found myself staying in relationships. Yeah. And it's not working, right? It's not working.
And I think it's a generational thing too, because I saw people in my family staying way longer than they should have stayed, till death did them part. And then she went on to live a fabulous life, her last few years. So I think that that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. So how do I change this up now, this behavior, and what do I do with it? And I had this situation happen this summer where inescapability, I didn't know what it was, and it was another opportunity, a beautiful opportunity for personal growth, which was I was on a little raft, and I go on a river trip every year, and this for 6 or 8 days, and just detach from real life.
Awesome.
And this particular group that I went with, Liz, and this is where listen to your still small voice. When I showed up, I was with my buddy. And when I showed up and we were getting ready to go on the trip and I met these people, I thought, these aren't my people. These people are talking about things I don't want to spend a week with them on the river talking about. Right. And they're, whatever it was, it's just not my vibe. And I knew it in the moment. And you know what I did? I overrode it and I went on the boat with them. And by day 4, my needs were not getting met for beauty and aesthetics. There were people talking about, all kinds of terrible things and politics. And I don't want to talk about that when I'm in the middle of nature. I want to really have a connection. Right. So my needs, what happened was they just kept not getting met every single day. And by the last day, what happens when our needs are chronically unmet for what it is that we need, we will start to eventually, it becomes now, I want to start getting graspy about that. And I'm going to try to meet it any way that I can. And that's when you see people, stay too long in a conversation with somebody in the grocery store when they need to leave. We all do that. Yeah. Because they have a need for friendship and connection in that moment, whatever it is. And they don't tear themselves away when they know they should. And I should have not gone on that trip. Even if it would have cost me the money, it would have been better to say, hey, buddy, let's go figure out something else to do. I'll cover your trip.
That's a great lesson in paying attention to your intuition too, your gut feeling.
Yeah. Noticing what I'm noticing. I noticed and I overrode it because of my habituated pattern of all those paradigms. You paid $1,000 for that trip. You have to go. It's going to be great. Oh, you'll just be nice, you'll win them over, whatever. None of that worked. And so it was another, I love when we graduate in the lesson land and get to a higher plateau, universe, God, spirit, whoever, Allah tells us, here's the next lesson, but on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So I will never do anything like that again. But literally the idea of inescapability, we were on a boat. I really could not escape. There was nowhere to go in the middle of Utah. So
I would love to talk about this more. Will you come back on the show again? Let's continue. We did the 2. Mm-hmm. I would love to do a third, do a whole series with you, because there's so much more here that we could dive into. I think it'd be fantastic. Do you want to go ahead really quick and say your website and email super quick? We have 1 minute and then do our closing goodbyes.
Yes, so I have a new email right now. So I'm going big and just hired a big social media team. And so my new email is thejamiewolf@gmail.com. thejamiewolf@gmail.com. I do one-on-one coaching sessions with people and offer lots of discount packages for that. And the exciting thing, Liz, that I announced last week is that I am going to be announcing in 2 weeks in front of a very large audience, a 4-week live online course about love and relationships. And we'll be talking about all these keys that we've discussed. And the price is going to be $787 for this 4-week seminar. I'm offering it to Vashon for the first 20 people that sign up, Vashon, and then also at this seminar, the price is going to be $387, and we're going to look at the spiritual truths, the truths with a capital T. What are all the tools in relationship that we can use? We'll be talking about many of the things we've talked about today. What is the short-term high in a relationship? Ignoring that conversation, not having it. And the short-term low, having it. So anyway, that's I'd love to see you all there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, go and sign up for this workshop, would you call it?
Mm-hmm.
And
just shoot me an email.
Yeah, shoot her an email. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Thank you, Jamie, for joining me. I can't wait until next week when we dive into this even more. This is Liz Peterson on Raise the Vibe on Voice of Vashon's 101.9 FM. Have a great day, everyone, and remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Sweet. We were running over there at that. I'm like, ah! I don't want it to
What happened? What happens?
I think that the way they roll it is it just goes to the end, and then they roll into a commercial and then go into the next thing. So I think that we'll be okay.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Coolio. So here's your cards. Just remember, needs red, feelings blue.
These are great.
And that this has nothing to do with this. So people will be like, understanding, what does it have to do with worry?
Right.
Nothing. It's just I used to carry 2 decks and I made a single deck.
Oh, that was smart. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yep,
yes,
welcome.
I would love to have you on again. If you're game.
I'm
all for a
this
series because this information is really fabulous and I'm really enjoying it, and hoping that everybody else is too. Thank you, everybody, as we're rambling on here about how our show went. Thank you so much for joining us. We forgot we were live. We were having so much fun. So I'm Liz Peterson on Raise the Vibe, and this is Jamie Wolf. Jamie, why don't you go ahead and share what you've got going on so we and our live audience can also rehear what you've got going on while
Great.
you've got on
here.
here.
The most exciting thing that's coming up is this 4-week live online course that I'm going to do, and it's going to be on Zoom. So I'll be able to see, there'll be 10 people. I'm going to do 2 classes. I'm going to limit it to that. And the reason the price is so low is because it's going to be my first time doing a Zoom class. So there may be a little technical glitch here and there, and hopefully people will be forgiven about that. The content is all going to be things that I've been teaching for 18 years. And all of these tools here, you'll get to take a deep dive with. So you will do an analysis of your friends. You'll look at what your old patterns are in relationship and love and relationships. You might realize that there's some conversations you need to have, and we'll be talking about how to have those in a really healthy, loving way and how to do that. So bringing in nonviolent communication and then lots of just laws of how people work together, and everything I do, this is a key, is evidence-based. So it's all based in science and even if it's a metaphysical idea,
Mhm.
I only use metaphysical ideas, which are of course all based in science, and then explain how that comes together. So we'd love to have you there. So all you have to do is just email me at thejamiewolf@gmail.com, and I'll send you a registration form and you can get on board. That'd be great.
Great. Thanks. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
And join us next week. Jamie and I are going to be doing this again to our series here. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye. Funny. Like blah 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 blah. The car.